Here's an example of the improvement. This is what I'm calling the fat catalog. This was pre-making some adjustments. What you're looking at here are each bar represents a zip code, and the number on top of the bar represents the amount of money we had to spend to get a new registration. So the one in the middle, the really tall guy, we spent $326 in printing and mailing, not staff costs, just printing and mailing to get one person to come in the door. This represents actually Emory's across the board, all of their programs, certificate programs, professional development programs, IT classes, and personal enrichment as well. So when you aggregate all of those, $326 is a really big deal. So what we decided to do is we set a bar, and we said if it's costing us this much to get registrations, we should not be sending to those catalog or to those zip codes. So we took those out and we sent them to other zip codes, and I want you guys to watch what happens. We're going to do this a couple of times, so don't worry if you miss it. But I'd like you guys to pay attention to the middle there, the 4 bars in the middle there are the tallest. We took our fat catalog and we made it fit. That meant we took all of those catalogs away from those middle zip codes and we distributed them amongst the rest. And you see some other zeros in there as well, but we decided those were not preferable zip codes. Those weren't friendly zip codes to send to, even if they were within 10 miles of campus, and even if the people there did have 4-year degrees. We decided it just was not worth it. I'll do this transition one more time. In most cases, what happened, if you look to the 4 bars to the right, those were what we considered good zip codes. We did not spend a lot of money to get customers out of those zip codes. And as we sent more catalogs to them, you can see, kind of imagine what would happen. It would be a little less efficient, and you'll see that happen. Here's the transition. Keep your eye on those 4 to the right. As we make this transition here, you see, that's right, oh sorry, the 3 to the right. It became slightly more expensive to get a registration out of those zip codes, just as we would have thought. Well, here's some food for thought for everyone. Look at the 107 and the 99 there off kind of to the middle left. There's a $15 that was kind of a fluke. That was, I think we sent, a handful of catalogs to that zip code. But the 107 and the 99 were zip codes in which we sent more catalogs. Watch the transition once again. Watch what happens to those guys. It actually became cheaper to get registrations from those zip codes. We sent more catalogs, and we had higher efficiency. Now, how's that possible? Well, I put a lot of thought into it, and that's one of my answers is a piece of the smart mailing list. The idea there was that we had been sending catalogs to that zip code using our parameters, but we weren't sending them to the right people in the zip codes. When we redoubled the number that we sent to those zip codes, they suddenly started hitting houses that were friendlier than our formula, our 10 miles within campus, 4-year degree, 75,000 or higher household income parameters provided. Interesting. I'll do that transition for everybody one more time just so you guys can see. Here's the fat catalog. Pick a spot if you'd like to look at it. And the fit catalog. I'm awfully proud of this. If you can't tell, I'm awfully proud. Well, the next step, of course, in analyzing, after analyzing zip codes and making little improvements, and we could do this quarterly and pull out the elbow grease and do it. The next step, of course, is to go a little bit deeper, to look at one zip code into the smallest, the most granular breakdown that we can get it into, and that is the carrier route, being the foundation of any good mailing list. And that's how your clearinghouse sends catalogs and brochures anyways, because it's cheaper for them to do it that way. But you're looking at a chart here that represents, every one of the bars here represents a carrier route within one zip code in Atlanta. And it's fascinating. This zip code overall was one of our friendliest, but if you look in there, you see some negative 100% for the ROI. That meant that we sent catalogs to certain carrier routes, and not a single person responded. Not a single person came and took a class. In other cases, you have, like the bar to the far right, probably one of the best carrier routes on the face of this planet for us. We spent $1. For every $1 we spent on catalogs in that carrier route, we got 35 back. That's a pretty sweet deal. And trickling down, all the way down. The next question, of course, was the next step of this, and we'll answer that with the smart mailing list itself. The next question was, look at those guys to the left. You have 577%, and 618%, and 546%, 764%. Which ones of those are really good enough? Clearly, 3,500% ROI is a very friendly carrier route, and we should continue sending to those. 179% is probably not good, and negative 100% is definitely not. but which of those, maybe 6 to the left, are really the good ones? Which ones are those lucrative activities? Which ones are the good activities, and which ones are the bad ones? We'll talk about that here in a second, but that was the next step of this analysis. But overall, what we learned was that we need to be very judicial in deciding who catalogs went to. We shouldn't guess about who good candidates are ever. We come up with a formula and leave it there. It's just not good enough. We need to teach ourselves who our good candidates are and who the people who are going to respond are going to be. We need to be able to know how many catalogs we should send. I don't want to send a catalog if somebody's not going to respond to it. And while I can never make it perfect, I can never send a catalog only to people who I know for sure are going to come. I can use probabilities to help me figure out the likely candidates, the really likely people, based on real numbers that come right out of our own systems. And of course, we learned that every time we made an improvement, there was always room for more improvement. And that's an important motto, to keep improving, keep improving, keep improving. And that's kind of what we took from that analysis. So without further ado, I would like to welcome everybody to the cutting edge of mailing lists and introduce the smart mailing list. It's important to note that the smart mailing list is an agile mailing list, and it's a process really that creates these mailing lists. But what I mean by agile is that it does well in good markets and it does well in bad markets because it's constantly improving itself, and it's adaptable to the climate. It's adaptable. This process is adaptable to the program. It's adaptable to the type of brochure that you're sending. It's agile and an incredibly powerful tool. Well, here's some old thing for you, a little process flow. Here we go. That works. What we used to do for catalogs is we would design them. We'd fill them up with content. We would put colors on them in pretty pictures. We would number the pages. We would ship those off to the printers to have them printed. And after they were printed and we checked to make sure there are no errors, we would mail them to our purchase lists and to some old customer lists. It worked, and it still does work. But I'm going to propose that out with the old, because the status quo is no good anymore, especially in these times. So here's the new thing for the process. At the very beginning of the process, we're going to design the collateral, and what I meant there was the actual content, the pages, the physical catalog itself. At the same time, we're going to design the lists, and the smart mailing list process is going to build those lists for us. We're going to build them at the same time so that we as we design the catalog, think about who's going to get that catalog. We already know kind of where they're going to go. And then we're going to send them off to be printed. Well, you guys can already tell that this process is going to be slightly larger than the other. Then they mailed, and what we normally would have done back in the day is circled right back into the very first stage of designing the new catalog at the new term. But instead what we're going to do is we're going to analyze that information throughout the term. And at the end of the term, we're going to generate a nice little report that tells us how to improve the lists, right? Wrong. The improvement doesn't come from a report. It's something that happens automatically. This process will analyze it for you. And I'll kind of talk about the individual pieces a little bit more, but this process is automatic, and every term, this is going to make improvements. For any of you who are familiar with Six Sigma, this may look like the DMAIC process to you of analyzing, making improvements, and being continuous in the design and measurement of things.